Inside Iran's missile and drone retaliation strategy, the swarm warfare doctrine in modern warfare, the most powerful weapon is not always the most expensive missile or the most advanced fighter jet. Sometimes it's numbers, hundreds of drones, dozens of missiles, launched at the same time from multiple directions. This is what military analysts call swarm warfare, and in recent years Iran has quietly turned this strategy into one of the most disruptive military doctrines in the Middle East. Instead of relying on a few high-tech weapons, Iran's strategy focuses on something very different. Overwhelming defenses through sheer volume. Cheap drones, cruise missiles, and ballistic missiles launched together in coordinated waves. The goal is simple but devastating. Force the enemy's defenses to fight too many targets at once until something eventually gets through. And when it comes to confronting Israel and US military allies in the region, this tactic has become one of Iran's most powerful strategic tools. The logic behind swarm warfare traditional military doctrine often focuses on superiority, better aircraft, better missiles, better technology. But Iran faces a unique challenge. Israel and the United States possess some of the most advanced air defense systems in the world. These include systems such as Iron Dome, David's Sling, Arrow interceptors, and American Patriot missile batteries. Individually, these defenses are extremely effective. They can detect incoming missiles, calculate their trajectories, and intercept them in midair. But every defense system has a limit, and that limit is capacity. Each radar system can only track a certain number of targets. Each missile battery has a limited number of interceptors, and each interceptor missile costs a significant amount of money. Iran's strategy exploits these limitations. Instead of trying to defeat these defenses with a single powerful strike, Iran attempts to overwhelm them. By launching large numbers of drones and missiles at once, defenders are forced to intercept target after target after target. Eventually, their systems become saturated, and when that happens, even the most advanced defense can start to fail. The birth of Iran's drone strategy. Iran did not always rely heavily on drones. In fact, decades ago, its military doctrine focused mainly on ballistic missiles and conventional forces, but over time, Iran realized that drones offered several major advantages. First, drones are relatively cheap to produce. Second, they can travel long distances. Third, they can be launched in large numbers. And perhaps most importantly, drones are extremely difficult to stop when used in swarms. Iran invested heavily in drone development over the past 2 decades. This resulted in the creation of several well-known drone families, including long-range strike drones capable of carrying explosive payloads. These drones can travel hundreds or even thousands of kilometers before reaching their targets, and because they fly at low altitudes, they are often harder for radar systems to detect compared to traditional missiles. When dozens of these drones are launched simultaneously, they create a complex battlefield environment for defenders. Air defense operators must quickly determine which targets are real threats and which might be decoys. Every second counts, and every interceptor fired reduces the defenders' available resources. Swarm warfare in action. Iran's swarm warfare strategy typically involves multiple layers of weapons working together. Instead of launching only drones or only missiles, attacks may combine several types of systems at the same time. The first wave often includes drones. These drones move slowly compared to missiles, but they serve an important purpose. They force air defense systems to activate radar tracking and begin launching interceptors. Once defenses are already engaged, a second wave may arrive. This wave could include cruise missiles. Cruise missiles fly faster and closer to the ground, making them harder to intercept. Then, finally, a third wave may appear. Ballistic missiles. These travel at extremely high speeds and descend from high altitudes toward their targets. By the time this third wave arrives, defenders may already be busy dealing with dozens of incoming drones and cruise missiles. The result is chaos. Defense systems must decide which targets to prioritize, which threats are the most dangerous, which can be ignored, and how many interceptors should be used. These decisions must be made in seconds, and mistakes can have serious consequences. The cost imbalance. One of the most powerful aspects of swarm warfare is economic. Air defense systems are incredibly expensive to operate. For example, interceptor missiles can cost hundreds of thousands or even millions of dollars each. But many attack drones cost only a tiny fraction of that price. In some cases, a drone costing tens of thousands of dollars may require an interceptor missile worth far more to stop it. This creates a cost imbalance. If defenders fire expensive interceptors at every cheap drone, they quickly drain their resources. Even if every drone is successfully destroyed, the defending country may still suffer financially. Iran's military planners understand this dynamic very well. By launching large numbers of low-cost drones, they force their opponents into a difficult decision: intercept everything and spend massive amounts of money, or conserve interceptors and risk letting some drones reach their targets. Either outcome benefits the attacker. The psychological impact swarm warfare is not only about physical damage, it is also about psychology. When hundreds of drones and missiles appear on radar screens at once, it creates intense pressure for military commanders. Operators must remain calm while managing an overwhelming amount of data. Every incoming object represents a potential threat, and when alerts begin sounding across defense systems, the stress level rises quickly. This psychological pressure is part of the strategy. Large swarm attacks create uncertainty. Even if most incoming weapons are intercepted, the sheer scale of the attack sends a powerful message. It demonstrates that the attacker has the capability to launch massive coordinated strikes. This message is meant not only for military leaders, but also for the public. Images of dozens of missiles and drones filling the sky can spread rapidly across news networks and social media. The visual impact alone can influence public perception and political decisions. Adapting to advanced defenses, of course, Israel and the United States are not passive targets. They continuously upgrade their air defense systems to counter evolving threats. New radar technologies can detect smaller objects, advanced interceptors can engage multiple targets more efficiently, and artificial intelligence is increasingly used to help defense systems prioritize threats. But swarm warfare continues to evolve as well. Iran and its regional partners constantly experiment with new tactics. For example, drones may be launched from multiple locations simultaneously. Some drones may carry electronic warfare equipment designed to disrupt radar systems. Others may act as decoys, drawing interceptors away from more dangerous weapons. The battlefield is constantly changing, and both sides are locked in an ongoing technological competition. Regional implications. Swarm warfare is not limited to a single battlefield. Because drones and missiles can travel long distances, attacks can originate far from their intended targets. This means conflicts involving Iran can potentially affect a wide area across the Middle East. Military bases, shipping routes, and critical infrastructure all become potential targets. Energy facilities, ports, and airfields are especially vulnerable to drone swarms. These locations often cover large areas, making them difficult to defend completely. Even a small number of drones getting through defenses could cause significant disruption. This is why many countries in the region have begun investing heavily in counter-drone technology. Laser weapons, electronic jamming systems, and improved radar networks are all being developed to address the swarm threat. But building a perfect defense remains extremely difficult. The future of swarm warfare looking ahead. Swarm warfare may become even more advanced. Artificial intelligence could allow drones to coordinate with each other autonomously. Instead of following pre-programmed flight paths, future drone swarms might adapt in real time. They could change routes to avoid defenses. They could select targets independently, and they could coordinate attacks with unprecedented precision. This type of technology could dramatically increase the effectiveness of swarm attacks. At the same time, defensive technologies are also advancing. Directed energy weapons such as high-power lasers could potentially destroy drones at a much lower cost than traditional interceptor missiles. If these systems become widespread, they may shift the balance again. But for now, swarm warfare remains one of the most challenging threats facing modern air defense systems. Conclusion: Iran's swarm warfare doctrine represents a major shift in how modern conflicts can be fought. Instead of relying solely on a few powerful weapons, the strategy focuses on volume, coordination, and saturation. Cheap drones, cruise missiles, and ballistic missiles launched in large numbers can overwhelm even the most advanced defenses. The objective is not just destruction, it is pressure. Pressure on defense systems, pressure on military budgets, pressure on political leaders, and pressure on public perception. As technology continues to evolve, swarm warfare will likely remain a central feature of future conflicts in the Middle East and beyond. Because in the age of drones and missiles, the battlefield is no longer defined by a single weapon, it is defined by the swarm. Inside Iran's missile and drone retaliation strategy, cheap drones versus billion-dollar defense is the $20,000 weapon that challenges a $3 million missile in modern warfare. The battlefield is no longer defined only by powerful armies or advanced fighter jets. Sometimes, the most disruptive weapon costs less than a luxury car. Imagine a drone that costs around $20,000 to $50,000. Now imagine the missile used to shoot it down costing more than $3 million. This is the new economic battlefield of modern war, and it is a battlefield that Iran has learned to exploit with remarkable efficiency. Instead of matching the United States or Israel weapon for weapon, Iran has focused on a strategy that flips the traditional balance of military spending. Rather than building the most expensive weapons, it builds large numbers of relatively cheap drones and missiles. The goal is not just destruction, the goal is to force the opponent into a financial dilemma. Every time a cheap drone enters defended airspace, it forces defenders to decide, do we fire $1 million interceptor to stop it? Or do we risk letting it pass? Either choice comes with a cost, and over time, those costs can add up quickly. The economics of modern air defense systems are among the most technologically advanced and expensive military systems ever created. They rely on powerful radars, sophisticated command systems, and precision interceptor missiles capable of destroying targets traveling at incredible speeds. Systems like Iron Dome, Patriot, and other missile defenses are designed to protect cities, military bases, and critical infrastructure from aerial threats. But these systems were originally designed with high-value threats in mind: ballistic missiles, cruise missiles, enemy aircraft. Each interceptor missile is carefully engineered to hit its target with extreme precision. This engineering comes at a high price. Some interceptor missiles cost hundreds of thousands of dollars. Others cost millions. And that is where the problem begins. When the incoming threat is a relatively cheap drone, the economics of defense suddenly become very unfavorable. Defenders are forced to spend large amounts of money to stop weapons that cost far less to produce. This imbalance creates what military analysts call asymmetric warfare. The attacker spends little, the defender spends a lot. Over time, this imbalance can strain even the most advanced military systems. Iran's strategic calculation. Iran's military planners understand this economic reality very well. They know they cannot compete directly with the massive defense budgets of countries like the United States. Instead of trying to match those budgets, they chose a different approach. Build weapons that are good enough to threaten defenses, but cheap enough to produce in large numbers. Drones fit this strategy perfectly. Many long-range drones are relatively simple compared to modern fighter aircraft or cruise missiles. They often use commercially available technology, basic navigation systems, small engines, lightweight materials. Despite their simplicity, these drones can travel hundreds or even thousands of kilometers. They can carry explosive payloads capable of damaging infrastructure, vehicles, or buildings. And when launched in large numbers, they become much more difficult to stop. Iran has invested heavily in this type of technology. Over time, it has developed a range of drone models designed for reconnaissance, surveillance, and attack missions. Some are designed for long-distance travel. Others are optimized for loitering, flying over an area until a target appears. Together, these systems form the backbone of Iran's cost-efficient aerial strategy. The cost trap. This strategy creates what analysts often describe as a cost trap for defenders. Consider what happens during the large drone attack. Radar systems detect incoming objects approaching defended airspace. Air defense operators must quickly determine whether those objects pose a threat. If they do nothing, the drones may reach their targets. But if they fire interceptors at every drone, they may quickly exhaust their supply of missiles. And those missiles are expensive. In some cases, a single interceptor missile may cost more than 100 drones combined. That means a defending country could spend millions of dollars stopping an attack that cost the attacker only a fraction of that amount to launch. Over time, this creates a strategic dilemma. Even if the defender successfully intercepts most of the drones, the financial burden continues to grow. For countries with large defense budgets, this may not be an immediate crisis. But in prolonged conflicts, economic sustainability becomes a major factor. Wars are not only fought with weapons, they are fought with resources. Quantity over complexity. Iran's drone strategy emphasizes quantity over complexity. Instead of creating extremely advanced drones that cost millions of dollars each, the focus is on producing larger numbers of simpler systems. These drones do not need to be perfect. They only need to be effective enough to challenge defenses. In many ways, this strategy mirrors tactics used throughout military history. During World War II, some nations relied on large numbers of relatively simple weapons to overwhelm more sophisticated defenses. The same principle applies today, only the technology has changed. Instead of mass-produced artillery shells, the focus is now on drones and missiles. And because drones are relatively inexpensive to build, they can be produced in significant numbers. This allows attackers to launch large swarm attacks designed to saturate air defense systems. Even if most drones are intercepted, a few may still reach their targets, and sometimes that is enough. The psychological effect on defenders, the economic imbalance, is not the only advantage of cheap drones. There is also a psychological dimension. When defenders know that every interceptor missile costs far more than the drone it is targeting, the pressure increases. Commanders must constantly be balanced protection against resource conservation. Should they fire interceptors at every incoming drone, or should they wait to see if the drones are heading toward valuable targets? These decisions must often be made in seconds. And when dozens of drones appear on radar screens at once, the situation becomes extremely. The stress of managing such scenarios can be intense. Every mistake could allow a drone to slip through defenses. This psychological pressure is part of the strategy. The attacker does not need every drone to succeed. They only need to force the defender into a constant state of tension and uncertainty. Expanding the drone battlefield. Another advantage of cheap drones is their flexibility. They can be launched from multiple locations. They can travel across borders. They can target infrastructure, military bases, or economic assets. Because they are relatively small and portable, they can also be deployed from areas far from traditional battlefields. This expands the range of possible targets: ports, oil facilities, airfields, power stations. All of these locations could become potential targets during drone warfare, and defending every possible location is extremely difficult. Even the most advanced air defense systems cannot cover every square kilometer of territory. This means attackers may focus on soft targets, locations that are important but less heavily defended. By doing so, they can achieve strategic effects without needing to destroy heavily protected military installations. The arms race begins as drone warfare becomes more common. Countries around the world are racing to develop new defenses. Traditional missile interceptors remain important, but they are no longer the only solution. New technologies are being explored: high-energy lasers, electronic jamming systems, directed energy weapons, artificial intelligence-assisted tracking, G systems. These technologies aim to reduce the cost of defending against drones. For example, a laser weapon might destroy a drone using electricity rather than an expensive missile. If such systems become widely available, they could dramatically reduce the economic advantage of cheap drones. But these technologies are still developing, and deploying them across large areas takes time and significant investment. For now, the cost imbalance remains a major factor in modern drone warfare. The strategic message beyond economics and tactics, cheap drone warfare sends a powerful strategic message. It demonstrates that advanced military power does not always guarantee security. Even countries with sophisticated defense systems must constantly adapt to new threats. Drones represent a form of warfare that is accessible, flexible, and constantly evolving. And for nations that cannot compete with traditional military superpowers, they offer a way to level the playing field. Iran's drone strategy reflects this broader shift in global military thinking. Instead of focusing solely on high-tech weapons systems, the emphasis is on creative strategies that exploit weaknesses in existing defenses. By combining large numbers of affordable drones with missiles and other weapons, attackers can challenge even the most advanced military forces. Conclusion: the rise of cheap drones has fundamentally changed the economics of modern warfare. A relatively inexpensive weapon can now force defenders to spend enormous amounts of money protecting their airspace. This imbalance lies at the heart of Iran's strategy against stronger military opponents. By deploying drones in large numbers, Iran can create pressure not only on defense systems, but also on military budgets and strategic planning. Every drone launched forces a decision. Fire an expensive interceptor, or risk letting the drone continue its path. In a prolonged conflict, those decisions can accumulate into a powerful strategic advantage. And as drone technology continues to evolve, the gap between cheap attack systems and expensive defense systems may become one of the defining challenges of future warfare. Because in this new era of conflict, victory is not determined only by who has the most powerful weapons. Sometimes, it is determined by who can fight the longest without running out of resources. And cheap drones are quickly becoming one of the most effective tools in that battle. Inside Iran's missile and drone retaliation strategy, the multi-front axis of resistance, strategy a war that doesn't come from one direction. When people imagine war, they often picture a single battlefield, two armies facing each other across a clear front line. But in the modern Middle East, the battlefield looks very different. Instead of one front, there can be many. Missiles from the north, drones from the east, rocket fire from the south, and attacks on military bases hundreds of kilometers away. This is the concept behind what analysts often call Iran's multi-front strategy, sometimes associated with networks of allied groups across the region. Rather than confronting powerful opponents directly with a single conventional army, Iran's strategy expands the battlefield across multiple regions at once. The result is a conflict environment where pressure can come from many directions simultaneously, and for defenders, that creates a difficult challenge, because protecting against one threat is manageable, but protecting against threats coming from multiple fronts at the same time is far more complex. The origins of the multi-front strategy. To understand why this strategy exists, it is important to consider geography and history. Iran sits in a region surrounded by multiple strategic rivals and powerful military actors. For decades, its military planners have studied how conflicts might unfold if direct confrontation ever occurred with technologically superior opponents. One conclusion became clear: a single battlefield would favor the stronger military power. Advanced air forces, superior technology, and massive defense budgets could dominate a conventional war. So instead of relying on traditional military confrontation alone, Iranian strategists began exploring ways to expand the battlefield beyond their own borders. The idea was simple in theory. If pressure could be applied from multiple locations at once, the opponent would be forced to divide its attention and resources. Instead of focusing on one conflict zone, it would need to monitor several regions simultaneously. This approach gradually evolved into a broader regional strategy, built around relationships with various allied groups across the Middle East. These alliances created the potential for coordinated pressure across multiple fronts, expanding the battlefield in a multi-front conflict scenario. Threats do not originate from only one location. Instead, they may appear in several regions across the Middle East. Each region has its own strategic importance. Some areas are close to major cities. Others are near critical infrastructure such as ports, shipping routes, or energy facilities. When multiple fronts become active at the same time, defending forces must stretch their resources. Air defense systems must be distributed across wider areas. Intelligence agencies must monitor more locations. Military units must prepare for threats from different directions. This complexity is one of the core advantages of a multi-front strategy. It forces opponents to constantly shift their attention and resources. Even if one front becomes quiet, another may suddenly escalate. The unpredictability makes long-term planning more difficult. Coordination across regions. Multi-front strategy depends on coordination. Different groups operating in different regions must be able to communicate, plan, and sometimes act in parallel. This coordination does not necessarily mean that every action is controlled from a single command center. Instead, many analysts describe the system as a network. Each group may have its own leadership, priorities and local objectives, but at the strategic level, their actions can create combined pressure. For example, if one region experiences rising tensions, activity may increase elsewhere at the same time. This does not always require identical operations. One area might see rocket fire, another might experience drone activity. Elsewhere, there might be cyber operations or attacks on infrastructure. Together, these events create the impression of simultaneous pressure from multiple directions, and that pressure can influence both military and political decision-making. The role of drones and missiles. Modern drone and missiles technology plays an important role in enabling multi-front operations. Unlike traditional military equipment that requires large bases and logistical support, drones can often be launched from smaller locations. This flexibility allows them to operate from a variety of environments: mountains, remote areas, coastal regions. Because drones and missiles can travel long distances, they also expand the range of potential targets. An attack does not need to originate near its destination. It can begin hundreds or even thousands of kilometers away. This capability allows multiple fronts to remain active without requiring large conventional armies to cross borders. Instead, smaller launch sites can generate significant strategic effects. And when combined with the swarm tactics discussed earlier, the impact becomes even greater: strategic pressure on multiple levels. The purpose of a multi-front strategy is not limited to military objectives. It also creates pressure on political and economic systems. When threats appear in multiple regions at once, governments must respond carefully. Escalating in one area might trigger reactions elsewhere. Military resources must be distributed across several fronts. Economic infrastructure may require additional protection. Shipping routes and energy supplies may become vulnerable. All of this creates a broader strategic environment where decisions in one location can influence events across the entire region. This interconnected dynamic makes conflicts more complicated, and it increases the importance of diplomacy, intelligence, and coordination between allies. Challenges for defenders defending against a multi-front strategy is extremely challenging. First, there is the issue of geography. Countries must monitor large areas for potential threats. Air defense systems cannot be placed everywhere at once. Second, there is the issue of timing. Attacks from different regions may occur simultaneously or in quick succession. This forces defenders to prioritize which threats require immediate attention. Third, there is the challenge of logistics. Moving military resources quickly between regions can be difficult. Aircraft, missile systems, and personnel require time to reposition. If threats emerge faster than resources can move, gaps in defense may appear. These challenges do not mean that defending countries are helpless, but they do illustrate why multi-front conflicts are often more complex than traditional wars. The information dimension in modern conflicts: information spreads almost instantly. News of attacks, missile launches, or drone activity can travel around the world within minutes. Social media, news networks, and satellite imagery all contribute to the rapid flow of information. In a multi-front conflict, this information environment becomes part of the strategy. When events occur in several regions at once, the global audience may perceive the situation as rapidly escalating. Images of missile interceptions or drone strikes can influence public opinion and political debate. This information dimension can amplify the psychological impact of multi-front operations. Even relatively small incidents may appear more significant when viewed as part of a larger pattern. For governments and military planners, managing this information flow becomes another critical challenge. The risk of escalation: one of the most important aspects of multi-front strategies is the risk of escalation. When multiple actors and regions are involved, the situation can change quickly. An event in one location may trigger reactions elsewhere. Allies may feel pressure to respond. Military commanders must constantly evaluate whether actions in one region could expand the conflict. This dynamic makes crisis management extremely important. Diplomatic channels often remain active even during periods of tension. Communication between governments can help prevent misunderstandings that might lead to unintended escalation. In a multi-front environment, these communication channels can play a crucial role in maintaining stability. The evolution of regional strategy over time. Strategies involving multiple fronts have continued to evolve. Advances in technology have made coordination easier. Satellite communications, encrypted messaging, and modern surveillance tools allow information to travel quickly between regions. This connectivity can enhance strategic awareness. Groups operating in different areas may be able to observe developments in real time. They can adapt their actions based on changing circumstances. At the same time, defensive technologies are also advancing. In early warning systems, improved radar networks, and integrated command structures are being developed to counter complex, multi-front threats. This ongoing cycle of adaptation is a common feature of modern military competition. Each new tactic eventually leads to new countermeasures. The future of multi-front conflicts. Looking ahead, multi-front strategies may become even more significant in global conflicts. As technology spreads and communication becomes faster, coordinating activities across large distances becomes easier. Drones, missiles, cyber operations, and information campaigns can all be combined into complex strategies. Rather than focusing on one decisive battle, conflicts may unfold as a series of interconnected events across multiple regions. This type of warfare requires new approaches to defense planning. Countries must consider not only their own territory, but also the broader regional environment. Alliances, intelligence sharing, and joint defense systems may become increasingly important, because in a multi-front conflict, no single country can manage every challenge alone. Conclusion: Iran's multi-front strategy represents a shift away from traditional battlefield concepts. Instead of relying solely on direct confrontation, the approach spreads pressure across multiple regions simultaneously. Missiles, drones, and allied groups operating in different locations create a network of potential fronts. For defenders, this creates a complex strategic puzzle. Resources must be divided, attention must be spread across wide geographic areas, and decisions made in one location may influence events elsewhere. This interconnected battlefield is becoming a defining feature of modern conflict, and as technology continues to evolve, multi-front strategies may become even more sophisticated. Because in the modern era of warfare, victory is not always decided by why one decisive battle. Sometimes it is determined by who can manage pressure coming from every direction at once. Inside Iran's missile and drone retaliation strategy, the decentralized Mosaic warfare command strategy, a war without a single command center. In traditional warfare, military power usually depends on a clear chain of command. Orders flow from the top. Generals direct operations. Units follow detailed plans. But modern conflicts are changing. What if a military strategy did not rely on one central command? What if destroying a headquarters or targeting leadership could not stop the operation? What if dozens of small units could operate independently, yet still contribute to the same larger objective? This idea is often described by analysts as Mosaic warfare. Instead of one large military structure, the strategy functions like a mosaic made of many small pieces. Each piece can operate on its own, but when combined together, those pieces form a much larger picture. For countries facing technologically superior opponents, this approach offers a powerful advantage, because when power is decentralized, the system becomes far harder to disrupt. The problem with centralized command: for most of modern military history, centralized command structures have been the standard model. Large headquarters coordinate strategy. Communication systems connect commanders with units on the battlefield. While this system allows for strong coordination, it also creates a vulnerability. If the central command structure is disrupted, the entire system can struggle to function. Modern military technology makes this risk even greater. Precision weapons, satellite intelligence, and advanced surveillance systems allow powerful militaries to locate and strike high-value targets, command centers, communication hubs, leadership compounds. If these targets are destroyed early in a conflict, CT8 can create chaos within the opposing military structure. Operations may stall, units may lose communication. Decision-making may slow down. For a country expecting to face technologically advanced adversaries, relying too heavily on centralized command can be risky, and that is where decentralized strategies come into play. The concept of mosaic warfare, the idea behind mosaic warfare, is simple but effective. Instead of relying on a few large command centers, the system is divided into many smaller operational units. Each unit has a certain level of independence. They can operate with limited instructions. They can adapt to changing conditions on the battlefield, and if communication with higher command is lost, they can continue their mission. Think of it like a mosaic artwork. Each tile is small and separate, but together they form a complete image. In a military sense, each tile represents a unit, a drone team, a missile launcher, or a local command cell. Individually, these units may not appear powerful, but when they operate simultaneously across a wide region, they can produce significant strategic effects. Decentralization and survivability. One of the biggest advantages of decentralized warfare is survivability. When military assets are spread across many locations, they become harder to destroy. Instead of targeting a single large base, an opponent must locate dozens or even hundreds of smaller sites. Some of these locations may be hidden, others may move frequently. Still others may operate only briefly before relocating. This makes it difficult for surveillance systems to track and eliminate every potential threat. Even if some units are destroyed, others remain active. The overall system continues to function. In many ways, decentralized warfare resembles a network rather than a hierarchy. And networks tend to be resilient. If one connection fails, the rest of the system can still operate. The role of mobility plays a crucial role in decentralized strategies. Missile launchers, drone teams, and support vehicles are often designed to move quickly. They can operate from temporary positions. After launching their weapons, they may relocate before the enemy can respond. This mobility creates additional uncertainty for defenders. Surveillance systems must constantly search for new launch sites. And because these sites can appear in different locations each time, predicting future attacks becomes difficult. Mobility also allows smaller units to blend into complex environments, urban areas, mountain regions, remote terrain. Each environment provides opportunities to conceal equipment and movement. In this way, decentralized operations can reduce the effectiveness of traditional military targeting methods. Communication in decentralized warfare. A decentralized system still requires communication. But instead of relying on a single command hub, information may flow through multiple channels: satellite communications, encrypted digital networks, local command structures. Each unit receives enough information to understand its role within the larger strategy. But it may not need constant direct control. This flexibility allows operations to continue, even if certain communication links are disrupted. In some cases, units may operate using pre-planned instructions. For example, if certain conditions occur, they may carry out specific actions. This concept is sometimes referred to as mission-type tactics. Instead of waiting for detailed instructions, units understand the objective and decide how best to achieve it within their local environment. Drones and the decentralized battlefield. Modern drone technology fits naturally within decentralized warfare. Drone teams can operate from small launch sites. They require large runways or permanent bases. In many cases, drones can be launched from mobile platforms or temporary locations. This flexibility allows them to become independent elements within the larger network. A drone team may receive target information and launch its mission without requiring direct supervision from a central command. Once airborne, drones can gather intelligence, track targets, or deliver payloads. Some drones may even relay information to other units. This creates a dynamic battlefield where information flows rapidly between multiple decentralized elements. Strategic resilience. Decentralized warfare increases what military planners call strategic resilience. Resilience means the ability to continue operating despite disruption or damage. In centralized systems, losing a key command center can significantly reduce operational capability. But in decentralized systems, the loss of one unit does not necessarily affect others. Each component continues to operate independently. This resilience can be particularly important in conflicts involving advanced surveillance and precision strikes. If an opponent attempts to disable leadership or destroy major military bases, decentralized forces may continue functioning. From a strategic perspective, this makes it harder to achieve a quick victory through targeted strikes. The challenge for opponents for technologically advanced militaries. Decentralized warfare creates several challenges. First, intelligence becomes more complicated. Instead of monitoring a few large military installations, analysts must track many smaller locations. Second, targeting becomes more difficult. Mobile units may relocate before they can be identified and attacked. Third, decision-making becomes more complex. If attacks originate from numerous small sites, responding effectively requires rapid coordination across multiple defense systems. Even if an opponent destroys several launch locations, others may remain hidden. This creates a constant cycle of detection, response, and adaptation. Technology and the future of decentralized warfare. As technology and the future of decentralized warfare may become even more sophisticated, artificial intelligence could assist small units in analyzing battlefield data. Autonomous drones might operate with minimal human guidance. Secure communication systems could allow decentralized networks to coordinate more effectively. At the same time, countermeasures are also developing. advanced surveillance satellites, improved signal intelligence, cyber operations targeting communication networks. These technologies aim to disrupt decentralized systems by identifying hidden nodes within the network, but the fundamental advantage of decentralization remains its flexibility. When a system is built from many small pieces rather than a few large ones, it becomes harder to dismantle completely. The strategic philosophy, beyond technology and tactics, decentralized warfare reflects a broader strategic philosophy. It recognizes that modern conflicts may involve powerful opponents with superior resources. Instead of trying to match that power directly, the strategy focuses on adaptability, small units, distributed capabilities, flexible command structures, all working together toward a shared objective. This approach emphasizes persistence rather than immediate dominance. The goal is to remain operational, despite pressure from stronger forces. Over time, this persistence can influence the overall balance of a conflict. Conclusion: the decentralized Mosaic warfare command strategy represents a significant shift in modern military thinking. Rather than relying on centralized control and large military formations, the strategy spreads power across many smaller operational units. Each unit acts as part of a larger network: missile teams, drone operators, mobile launch platforms, all functioning as individual pieces within a broader strategic design. This decentralization increases resilience. It makes operations harder to disrupt, and it complicates the task of opponents attempting to neutralize the system. As drone technology, communication networks, and artificial intelligence continue to evolve, decentralized warfare may become an even more prominent feature of future conflicts. Because in the modern battlefield, victory may not always belong to the side with the biggest headquarters. Sometimes, it belongs to the side whose network of smaller pieces continues operating no matter how many are removed. Inside Iran's missile and drone retaliation strategy, saturation and timing missile strike tactics, when seconds decide the outcome in modern warfare, timing can be just as powerful as firepower. A missile launched too early may be intercepted. A drone launched too late may arrive alone and vulnerable. But when dozens of weapons appear in the sky at exactly the right moment, the entire battlefield changes. Missiles descending from high altitude, cruise missiles flying just above the terrain, drones approaching slowly from multiple directions, or arriving within minutes or even seconds of each other. For air defense systems, this creates a dangerous scenario known as saturation, and when saturation is combined with precise timing, even the most advanced defensive systems can face enormous pressure. This tactic has become an important element in modern missile warfare strategies across the Middle East, because defeating an advanced defense system does not always require a single unstoppable weapon. Sometimes it simply requires too many threats arriving at the same time. Understanding saturation, attacks to understanding saturation tactics. Imagine a security system protecting a building. If one intruder approaches, the system easily detects and stops them. If 2 or 3 intruders appear, security may still manage the situation. But what happens if dozens arrive simultaneously from every entrance? Even the best system can become overwhelmed. This is the principle behind saturation attacks. Air defense systems are designed with certain limits. Radar systems can track many objects, but their processing capacity is not unlimited. Interceptor missiles are stored in launch batteries, but each battery carries only a limited number of missiles. Operators must decide which targets to intercept first, which ones represent the most immediate danger. When dozens of threats appear simultaneously, those decisions become extremely difficult. The defense system must prioritize, and prioritization always carries risk, because every target that is not intercepted immediately becomes a potential breakthrough. The importance of timing saturation alone is powerful, but when combined with precise timing, it becomes even more effective. Timing determines how threats arrive in defended airspace. If all weapons arrive at the exact same moment, defenders face an immediate surge of targets. But if attacks arrive in carefully planned waves, defenders may face something even more challenging. The first wave may trigger air defense responses. Interceptor missiles are launched. Radar systems become fully engaged. Command centers begin tracking incoming threats. Then, just as defenses are focused on the first wave, a second wave arrives, and shortly after that, a third. Each wave forces the defenders to react again and again. The goal is not simply to overwhelm defenses instantly, It is to keep them under constant pressure. Over time, this pressure can exhaust interceptor supplies and strain command systems. Layered attack strategy. A. Breaks. The story stops. A. Saturation tactics rely on layered attacks involving different types of weapons. Each weapon plays a different role. For example, slower drones may be launched first. These drones travel at relatively low speeds and altitudes. Their purpose is not always immediate destruction. Instead, they act as early pressure tools. They force air defense systems to activate. They draw attention and interceptors. Then, while defenses are already engaged, faster weapons may arrive. Cruise missiles flying at low altitudes. These missiles are harder to detect because terrain and buildings can block radar signals. Finally, ballistic missiles may enter the battlefield. These travel at extremely high speeds, descending from high altitude. Because they move so quickly, defenders have only seconds to respond. By combining drones, cruise missiles, and ballistic missiles in the same operation, attackers create multiple layers of complexity for defense systems. Each layer requires different interception methods, and when those layers appear together, the defensive challenge multiplies. Confusing the defense network. Another objective of saturation tactics is confusion. Modern air defense networks rely heavily on data, radar signals, tracking information, threat classification systems. All of this data must be processed quickly so commanders can make decisions. When dozens of objects appear simultaneously, the amount of data increases dramatically. Operators must determine which objects are real threats, which may be decoys, which are heading toward critical targets, and which may simply pass harmlessly through defended airspace. This decision-making process must occur in seconds. Even advanced computer systems can struggle when the volume of incoming information becomes extremely high. The result is a situation where defenders must rely on both automation and human judgment. Under intense pressure, and under those conditions, mistakes become more likely. The role of decos in saturation attacks. Not every object needs to be a real weapon. Some may serve as decoys. Decoy drones or missiles are designed to appear threatening to radar systems. They may mimic the flight patterns of actual weapons. They may generate radar signatures similar to more dangerous targets. The goal is simple: force defenders to waste interceptor missiles. If an interceptor costing hundreds of thousands of dollars destroys a cheap decoy, the attacker still gains an advantage, because each interceptor fired reduces the defender's remaining supply. And once those supplies begin to run low, the defender must become more selective about which threats to engage. That moment of hesitation can create opportunities for real weapons to slip through. Pressure on command system saturation. Attacks do not only challenge missile defenses, they also place enormous pressure on command and control systems. Military commanders must coordinate multiple defensive assets at once. Radar stations, interceptor batteries, electronic warfare units, communication networks, all must work together seamlessly, but when dozens of threats appear simultaneously, coordination becomes more complicated. Information must flow quickly between different units. Orders must be issued rapidly, and decisions must be made without delay. Even a short delay can allow a fast-moving missile to approach its target. This is why modern air defense systems rely heavily on automation. Computers assist operators by identifying threats and recommending responses. But even automated systems require human oversight. And during saturation attacks, that oversight becomes extremely demanding. Geographic complexity, timing, and saturation tactics also take advantage of geography. Weapons launched from different directions can arrive at a target area simultaneously. For example, one group of drones might approach from the east. Cruise missiles might travel along coastal routes. Ballistic missiles might descend from high altitude from another direction entirely. When all these threats converge on the same location, defenders must monitor multiple sectors of airspace at once. Radar coverage may overlap, but coordination between sectors becomes critical. If one area receives too many threats at once, defense systems in other sectors may need to assist. But moving interceptor resources between sectors takes time, and saturation tactics are specifically designed to reduce the time available for such adjustments. Strategic effects beyond the battlefield. Saturation attacks are not only about physical damage, they also create broader strategic effects. For example, they can test the effectiveness of defensive systems. Each large-scale attack provides valuable data: which weapons were intercepted, which were not, how quickly defenses responded. This information can be used to refine future tactics. In addition, saturation attacks send a powerful message. They demonstrate the ability to launch large, coordinated operations. This message can influence political decision-making and public perception, even if most incoming weapons are intercepted. The scale of the attack itself may attract global attention. Images of dozens of missiles or drones in the sky can spread rapidly through news media and social networks. This visibility amplifies the psychological impact of the operation. The defensive response countries facing saturation threats are constantly developing new defensive strategies. One approach is layered defense instead of relying on a single intersection system. Multiple systems operate together. Long-range interceptors target threats at high altitude. Medium-range systems intercept cruise missiles. Short-range defenses target drones and smaller threats. Another emerging solution involves directed energy weapons. High-energy lasers could potentially destroy drones at much lower cost than interceptor missiles. Electronic warfare systems can also disrupt drone navigation or communication. These technologies aim to reduce the economic advantage of saturation attacks, but implementing them across large areas remains a major challenge. The future of saturation warfare: as technology advances, saturation tactics may become even more sophisticated. Artificial intelligence could help coordinate large numbers of drones simultaneously. Autonomous systems might adjust their flight paths in response to defensive actions. Some drones may act as scouts, identifying weaknesses in defense networks. Others may carry electronic warfare systems designed to disrupt radar signals. The battlefield could become a complex web of interacting machines. Defenders will continue developing new countermeasures. But the basic principle of saturation, overwhelming defenses through volume and timing, will likely remain relevant, because every defensive system has limits, and saturation tactics are specifically designed to find those limits. Conclusion: saturation and timing tactics represent one of the most challenging aspects of modern missile and drone warfare. By launching multiple weapons in carefully coordinated waves, attackers can create intense pressure on even the most advanced air defense systems. Drones may arrive first, cruise missiles may follow. Ballistic missiles may descend moments later. Each layer adds complexity. Each wave increases pressure, and each second forces defenders to make rapid decisions under extreme conditions. In this environment, victory does not depend solely on having the most powerful weapon. It depends on coordination, timing, and volume. Because when dozens of threats appear in the sky at once, the battle is no longer about a single missile. It becomes a test of how much pressure a defense system can handle before something gets through. And in modern warfare, that moment of saturation may determine the outcome of an entire operation. Inside Iran's missile and drone retaliation strategy, strategic retaliation, and deterrence messaging, when retaliation is a message in warfare, retaliation is often seen as a simple response. One side strikes, the other side strikes back. But in modern geopolitics, retaliation is rarely that simple. Sometimes the real target of a retaliation is not a military base, a radar system, or a piece of infrastructure. Sometimes the real target is a message to enemies, a message to allies, and a message to the world. In the complex, strategic landscape of the Middle East, missile launches and drone operations are not only military actions, they are also part of a broader communications strategy. Every strike sends a signal, every response carries meaning, and sometimes the most important outcome of a military operation is not the physical damage it causes, but the political message it delivers. This is where the concept of deterrence messaging becomes crucial, because in modern conflicts, the goal is often not total war. The goal is to shape behavior, to influence decisions, and to prevent future attacks by demonstrating the ability to respond. Understanding deterrence is one of the central concepts in modern military strategy. At its core, deterrence is about preventing an opponent from taking action, but it does not rely solely on defense. Instead, deterrence works by convincing the opponent that the cost of aggression will be too high. If a country believes that attacking another nation will trigger a powerful retaliation, It may decide that the risk is not worth it. In this way, deterrence operates through expectation. The expectation that any attack will lead to consequences. For deterrence to work, however, two things must be clear. First, the ability to retaliate must exist. Second, the willingness to retaliate must be believable. Without both of these elements, deterrence loses its effectiveness. And this is why strategic retaliation plays such an important role. It demonstrates capability, and it reinforces credibility. Retaliation as strategic communication in many modern conflicts. Retaliation is carefully calculated. Military planners consider not only the tactical outcome, but also the message the action will send. A strike may be designed to demonstrate capability without triggering a full-scale escalation. Targets may be selected to avoid civilian casualties, while still sending a strong signal. Timing may also be important. Responding too quickly might escalate tensions. Waiting too long might make the retaliation appear weak. So, decisions about retaliation often involve a balance between military objectives and political signaling. This balance is especially important in regions where multiple countries and alliances are involved. Every action is observed closely, and every response is analyzed for its meaning. Demonstrating capability. One purpose of strategic retaliation is to demonstrate capability. When missiles or drones are launched in response to an attack, they show that the responding country possesses operational military tools, range, accuracy, coordination. All of these capabilities can be displayed during retaliatory operations. Even if the strike is limited in scope, the demonstration of technology and reach can have strategic consequences. Observers may analyze how the weapons performed, which targets were reached, how defenses responded. This information becomes part of the broader strategic picture. It influences how other countries evaluate potential risks in future confrontations. In this sense, retaliation becomes a form of demonstration. It shows that certain capabilities are real and operational. The psychological dimension. Strategic retaliation also has a psychological component. Military actions often influence perceptions of strength and resolve. If a country responds strongly to an attack, it may reinforce the perception that it will not tolerate aggression. If it does not respond at all, adversaries may interpret that as hesitation or weakness. Of course, perceptions do not always reflect reality. But in international politics, perception can shape decision-making. Leaders often consider how their actions will be interpreted by both allies and opponents. Public opinion can also play a role. Images of missile launches or intercepted drones may circulate widely through news media and social platforms. These images can influence how audiences around the world understand the situation. In this environment, the psychological impact of retaliation becomes almost as important as the physical impact. Balancing retaliation and escalation. One of the most difficult challenges in strategic retaliation is avoiding uncontrolled escalation. If one side launches a major strike, the other side may respond with an even larger one. This cycle can quickly spiral into a broader conflict. To prevent this, military planners sometimes design responses that are strong enough to send a message, but limited enough to avoid triggering full-scale war. This approach is sometimes referred to as calibrated retaliation. Calibrated responses might involve specific targets, limited numbers of weapons, or operations conducted at certain times. The goal is to demonstrate capability and resolve without crossing thresholds that might provoke a much larger conflict. Achieving this balance requires careful planning and constant monitoring of the strategic environment. The role of technology in deterrence. Modern missile and drone technologies play a significant role in deterrence messaging. Long-range systems demonstrate the ability to reach distant targets. Precision-guided weapons show the capability to strike specific locations. Drone swarms reveal new forms of tactical innovation. Each of these capabilities can influence strategic calculations. When countries observe new technologies being used in retaliation, they must consider how those technologies might affect future conflicts. This technological dimension adds another layer to deterrence strategy. It is not only about the number of weapons available. It is also about how advanced and adaptable those weapons are. Regional implications. Strategic retaliation does not occur in isolation. In the Middle East, multiple countries maintain alliances and security partnerships. When a retaliation occurs, regional actors often watch closely. Some may interpret the action as a warning. Others may see it as reassurance that certain security commitments remain strong. This means that retaliation can send messages to several audiences simultaneously: the immediate opponent, regional allies, international observers. Each audience may interpret the message differently. For this reason, the strategic context surrounding retaliation is extremely important. Diplomatic communication often continues alongside military operations. Leaders may issue statements explaining the purpose of their actions. These statements help shape how the retaliation is understood globally. Deterrence in the information age. In the past, news about military operations might take hours or days to spread. Today, information travels almost instantly. Satellite imagery, real-time video, social media reports, all of these sources contribute to a rapidly evolving information environment. When missiles are launched or drones appear in the sky, the world often sees it within minutes. This transparency changes how deterrence messaging works. Operations are no longer observed only by governments and military analysts. They are seen by millions of people around the world. This global visibility can amplify the impact of retaliation, but it can also create challenges. Misinformation and speculation can spread quickly. Images may be interpreted in different ways by different audiences. As a result, strategic communication has become an essential part of modern military operations. The long-term goal of deterrence, ultimately, the purpose of deterrence is stability. By convincing potential adversaries that the cost of aggression will be too high, countries hope to prevent conflict before it begins. Strategic retaliation supports this goal by reinforcing credibility. When a country demonstrates that it will respond to attacks, the deterrent message becomes stronger. However, deterrence is not static. It evolves as technology changes and political relationships shift. New weapons systems shift. New weapons systems may alter strategic balances. New alliances may reshape regional dynamics. As a result, deterrence strategies must constantly adapt. What works in one period may not work in another. The future of strategic messaging. Looking ahead, deterrence messaging may become even more complex. Cyber operations could play a larger role. Autonomous drones might change how retaliation is carried out. Artificial intelligence could help analyze threats and coordinate responses more quickly. At the same time, diplomatic efforts will remain essential. Even the most advanced military technology cannot replace dialogue and negotiation. In many cases, the most successful deterrence strategies combine strong defensive capabilities with active diplomacy. Together, these approaches aim to prevent crises from escalating into larger conflicts. Conclusion: strategic retaliation is about far more than immediate military response. It is part of a broader system of communication and deterrence that shapes international behavior. Missiles and drones may be the visible elements of this system, but behind each launch lies a carefully calculated message, a message about capability, a message about capability, a message about resolve, and a message about the potential consequences of future actions. In regions where tensions run high and alliances intersect, these messages can influence decisions at the highest levels of government. They can shape how countries evaluate risk, and they can determine whether crises escalate or stabilize. Because in the complex world of modern geopolitics, warfare is not only about weapons, it is also about signals, perception, and credibility. And sometimes, the most powerful strike is the one that convinces an opponent not to attack at all.